2. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur. I am one of your hosts, but today we are going to go on about films that have to do with the devilish nature, at least those that have to do with evil incarnate. That has been our theme for the last couple of months, and it's going to continue that way, at least until we have somewhat drowned out the possibilities of the devil. So this particular film is from 1967. It was directed by Stanley Donen in Panavision format, using deluxe color, and it was written by comedian Peter Cook, and it starred his comedy partner Dudley Moore. And it is a comedic retelling of the Faust legend, which is fairly similar to the story that we kind of undertook in the Devil and Daniel Webster. It's just that this one definitely goes a different way.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I was reminded too much of the Devil and Daniel Webster while watching this one.
Alrighty, so this is what IMDb says about the film, and then we'll go into our first impressions. A hapless loser sells his soul to the devil in exchange for 7 wishes, but has trouble winning over the girl of his dreams. So, first impressions of this film. Was this a first-time watch for you, my friend Boris? And welcome back to the show, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry about the glitches and the technical issues. My first impressions. Yesterday was my first time watching the movie. As usual, I watched it once myself first and then with you again. And my first impressions were pretty good, actually. I must say I was rather surprised by how well the humor in this movie still works nowadays, in spite of the fact that the movie was made quite a long time ago.
Oh yeah, I believe it or not, myself, I watched it many years ago on TV, and I didn't know what it was. And at first, I thought it was the Devil and Daniel Webster, but when I got it from Criterion, it was not it. So I had to figure out what exactly was the film that I had actually seen, and I remembered. I didn't remember that Dudley Moore was in it, but I remembered the dude that played the devil kind of reminded me of like a Beatle. That's what I remember, and I finally found out what it was, and it was Bedazzled. So now that I've seen this film several times, I am glad that I know about it, and it's just so funky and weird and wacky, and it's entertaining.
Definitely.
So I guess Dudley Moore actually, and we can talk more about this later, but Dudley Moore actually did the music for this film, which is kind of funky.
Oh, wow.
But in any case, so Dudley Moore ends up playing a burger flipper in a restaurant called Wimpy's, set in London. He plays a character by the name of Stanley Moon. What do you think about Stanley Moon as a character?
Well, I must say I found him somewhat sad character in spite of the movie being a comedy since at the beginning he almost tried to kill himself. That was rather extreme. But then later on, he was kind of funny. Well, the situations he found himself in were funny.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would have to say so too. I mean, Dudley Moore. If you haven't seen him before, this one kind of like puts him in a satire like comedy form. It's dry humor and it's black humor, so to say. So it's kind of sarcastic in its tone. at,
yeah.
at least that which that I know, and everything is set in a monotones. Like matter of factly, as far as Peter Cook goes. When I mean he shows up in a cape and a black suit, at first, and well, now that we're talking about him, what do you think about George Spigot as a character?
Oh, he is very cool. He made me laugh many times throughout the movie, and yeah, I must say I really liked that first outfit of his that you mentioned with the suit and the cape. That really looked cool. And yeah, he definitely, well, his character had a definitely great sense of humor. And
Oh yeah. I think for the swinging '60s, this was definitely the devil to put out there in the open, for sure. I mean, he said things matter of factly. I mean, while he was talking to Stanley Moon about his contract and stuff, he was like playing pranks on people. He was tearing up books. uh, but in this very beginning scene, we see him as a short order cook in a burger flipping restaurant called Wimpy's. And he has the hots for a waitress that apparently has been working with him for 6 years. And he's just never gotten up the gumption to talk to her. And her name is Margaret. So, what do you think about Margaret as a character?
well, actually, it's difficult to have a specific opinion of her as a character since her character changes so much throughout the movie according to Stanley's wishes that get granted by the devil. Her personality always changes, so it's it's kind of difficult to have a very specific opinion about the character, but at least the actress did a pretty good job playing so many different personalities throughout the movie.
Well, and actually, this particular film starts out with a particular plea where um, Stanley Moon goes to church and evidently asks, prays to God to help him out. And when he doesn't, he actually does go and try to talk to Margaret, but all the words get stuck in his throat. And he ends up going back and trying to hang himself. What do you think about that aspect of the film? Do you think that was the proper way to approach?
Well, I guess he should have just said what was on his mind. I mean, it's not like they had only met yesterday. She knew who he was. It's not like he couldn't have just started the conversation. But yeah, I guess what happens when someone deals with low self-esteem and so on.
Oh
But
yeah. But a certain character, which we don't know his name as of yet, was listening to his plea and followed him to his restaurant and ordered something, and introduced himself and offered him 7 wishes. Brought him to evidently a place of business, and the first character that we meet with George Spigot is Anger. What did you think about Anger?
well, if I knew a real person like him, I would probably have a big problem with someone with such a personality. But in this story, it made enough sense. I mean, all of these characters were acting in accordance with one of the 7 deadly sins that they represent. And this guy, anger, or as they would usually say, wrath, as one of the 7 deadly sins. Well, he was acting the way he would be expected to act regarding what he represents, like he was all anger and violence.
Oh yeah, and so he basically shows him a contract, and he starts to read about it, and he basically tells him, "Hey, what is a soul to you? I mean, it really doesn't mean much, anyways, to you at the
Oh,
moment. What you know?"
yeah, actually, now that you say that, that actually was a moment when I was reminded of the Devil and Daniel Webster. I forgot that.
Yeah. So there
Mm.
are fair similarities. It's just, um, it's told differently. I mean, he's going through, and well, and in order to show him, uh, before he even takes him to his factory, he asks him to prove he is who he says he is.
Uh, mm,
So what exactly does he ask for?
uh, first, he asks for an ice cream, I I don't remember exactly what he asked, but it resulted in them being teleported to another location, to this place where Anger was. What was it called again? I forgot.
Oh, I forget too. It was George Spigot's something or other, and um, I guess inside is like a factory where he gets things shipped to him, and he ruins whatever is there. I mean, if it's a record, he scratches it. In fact, he scratches a record, which evidently later is a record that he plays for his uh, so-called love interest.
Oh, that was the same record. I didn't notice.
Yeah, it just so happened to be like the same records, so it set itself up, the film did, and it worked out nicely for all the different fuck up wishes that he ended up being in. What was the first thing that he wished for?
That I think he wait, was it when he wished that he could speak more fluently, sound more intelligent, and so on? That what
Yeah, that so he could
something
become an
like that.
intelligent bloke of some sort, because he didn't know how to say the words that he needed to say, and so um, he finds himself speaking to Margaret, um, and speaking to her intelligently, and and I guess he tells her about different art pieces along their way, and they're walking, and they end up going back to a different place that apparently is his apartment at the moment. And he's got all kinds of books and records and music, and they basically have a moment where him and her are listening to the music, and he's talking about it intellectually. And
Yeah.
what happens here?
Uh, that's where it gets bad eventually. Like, she mentioned something about why wouldn't people touch each other? It's natural, or something like that, she said. And then he outright tried to have sex with her, and she started to scream that he was trying to rape her. And then he produced that noise with his mouth to end that wish because he realized it had failed. Mm.
Well, and one of the things that George Spigot said that he could do in order to cancel out each wish, and if he wasn't happy with the wish, then he would be able to what is it? Spit? No, blow. What do they call that?
I don't know the word for it. Like when you produce bark. Yeah, that.
When you take your tongue and disperse your tongue between your lips, and you basically stick your tongue out and basically vibrate your tongue. Every time that he's not happy with the thing, but he also tells him that he's not in a game with God. He's trying to be the first to gather 1 billion souls, and I guess if he achieves it first, he will be readmitted to heaven. But he is also busy with minor acts of vandalism and spite. Helped most notably by the 7 deadly sins, most notably lust and envy. So, when he spits, where does he go? Oh, does he become a delivery man or something like that?
The first time, actually, I'm not sure what exactly. Oh wait, I think after the first time they ended up on that building or whatever it was, where George was sending a pigeon to crap on someone's head.
Oh yeah, that was kind of funny.
Definitely.
And then so the next wish that he wished, didn't he wish like that he was rich or some shit?
I think so. And was it also when he wished for Margaret to become very physical, which ended up being turned against him? Was that the second wish? I'm not sure.
I think it might have been. And she ended up being too physical towards one of the help around his place, and I liked how the fact that Peter Cook was just saying, "Oh, your wife is like very attractive. She's very attractive to me. You don't mind that I'm telling you that she's very attractive." And Dudley Moore is just lying there sipping his thing and saying like, "Oh, I suppose it is. Oh, righto." Just agreeing with everything he's saying, and it's not until like he's playing pool with him, and he disappears is when he goes and like checks out where his wife is, you know. And apparently they're playing some music in another room or something like that, and he's like, let me be right back before they start the next movement. So it is kind of hilarious how he just it just speaks to him so outright, you know, trying to get him jealous, you know.
Indeed.
And he just lies there and acts like nothing is bothering him, you know.
Yeah.
But it ultimately bothers him, so he blows a raspberry again.
Indeed.
And he ends up in a bee's nest next to the devil, and he basically catches some bees and throws them towards some flower hippies.
Indeed, I must say that was. Yes.
What did you think about that?
Actually, I do see why it would regularly be funny, but I have bad experiences with bees myself, so I must say I found that kind of nasty.
Yep. And then what else did he wish? Okay, so the first wish, he wishes to be more articulate. He turns him into a talkative and pretentious intellectual with a strong Welsh accent.
Yes. Then there was that one where he wanted for her to be more physical. Was the third one when he wanted to become a fly on the wall, or was that later?
The third wish was when Stanley wishes to become a rock star.
That was the third one.
Yep, and his fame was shortly lived because he was usurped by a new band. And the year's most exciting discovery, Drumble Wedge and the Vegetation, whose lead singer sings in a hypnotic monotone voice about his disdain for anyone except himself. You will fill me with inertia. And his intended Margaret is one of these many entranced groupies.
Yeah, I thought. Yes.
The next one, the next wish is that he wishes to be a fly on the wall. Because in the background, I guess they kind of interject that a inspector has started to investigate his death.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah, from what I understood, I think it was like Stanley left a suicide note before he tried to kill himself, but then he survived and went away with George, and the note was left there, so they didn't know what had happened, whether he was dead or alive, and so on. And yeah, in the note, he mentioned that he was leaving his collection of moths to Margaret, so she became a part of the investigation. And she was with those policemen as they were investigating. And they ended up in a morgue or something like that, where there were some dead bodies, and she went there to make sure that none of them is Stanley.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that was kind of kind of cool that Margaret actually started to think about him instead of instead of just him being like an invisible person within his work or whatnot. And she also said that to the inspector that she always remembered that he made the burgers exactly right.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he George seizes the opportunity to use his "I wish I was a fly on the wall" to turn them into a couple of flies on the wall.
Yeah, and animated flies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Stanley then wishes for a quiet life in the countryside with children, and Margaret making the anniversary dinner. It then becomes soon that Margaret is another man's wife. While deeply in love, even the attempt to consummate their affection drives both of them into
Mm.
emotional agony.
Yeah. Like,
Because by the time they go out and try to have their affair, they're so much thinking of how nice he was and letting her come out with him that it depressed them by the time they were together.
indeed, like the devil always would always find a way to twist George or Stanley's wish so that what Stanley expressed wishing for would technically come true, but with some catch that would make things go wrong. So. Yeah, in this case, he wanted Margaret to be in love with him, but he didn't specify that she mustn't already be married to another man.
And so he raspberries out of that one, and he attempts to frame a sixth wish that George cannot ruin for him. So he wishes that he and Margaret loved one another, lived away from the big city, and would always be together. However, George turns him into a nun of the Order of Saint Beryl, or the Leaping Berylians, who glorify their founder by jumping on trampolines, expanding on a sketch that previously appeared in Cook and Moore's TV show. Not only, but also, Margaret is also a nun in the order, but refuses to consider consuming their love as they are both women. Stanley attempts to escape the wish by blowing a raspberry to no effect, and he returns to London to confront George. When Stanley, of course, what do you think about that whole scenario? I thought it was, I thought it was pretty funny, especially when he was afraid to trample. He was afraid to jump.
Yeah, it was definitely the funniest one of the wishes, and it really. I'm sorry. It was definitely one of the funniest wishes, and really showing how clever and creative the devil was. Stanley specified everything, like everything he could have possibly thought of, and the devil was like, "Yeah, but you didn't specify your gender, so now let's turn you into a woman." Yeah.
So when Stanley tries to use his seventh wish, George reveals he had already used it, his trial wish for an ice lolly.
Yeah, that was a rather creative plot twist, evidently planned since the very beginning. I found that quite amusing.
And ultimately, at this point, Spigot spares Moon's damnation because he has already exceeded his quota of 100 billion souls, and he can afford to be generous. So Stanley is dully returned to his old job and life, and more clear-sighted. And Spigot goes up to heaven to meet God, but is rejected again. St. Peter explains that when he gave Stanley back his soul, Spigot did the right thing, but with the wrong motive. So then we have the devil trying to scurry back to whence he found Stanley to begin with, and he tries to tell him, "Hey, I have a new offer for you." And that's when he gets turned down, and he starts the devil's Spigot starts to leave, and he threatens revenge on God by unleashing all the tawdry and shallow technological curses of the modern age.
Yeah, I must say I somewhat felt sorry for George at that point, actually.
Well, yeah, he was so looking on trying to beat God at all odds, and he wasn't able to in the end. And of course, God laughed his ass off at him in the end. You
Yeah.
don't normally hear that kind of humor on God. You know, you normally have him not really doing much at all in on certain instances, being more holier than thou. You know.
Yeah, especially in those older movies when people were taking the whole concept somewhat more seriously than they do nowadays.
Well, I imagine that this film was definitely not quite the norm at the time. I mean, this was at the end of the swinging 60s, all the love era, you know, that let's spread love and sex everywhere, you know, the flower power.
Yeah, and I must say I'm pretty impressed that they actually made devil-related comedy at that point, just before movies like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, and The Omen started to come out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's odd about this one. I mean, it's definitely a relatable a devil story. You know, I mean, it's I don't think that many of these scenarios aren't that far off from modern life. Although I do like the different like 70s sets. You know, the six. You know, it was. Oh, and you have to mention lust throughout this entire
Oh
thing.
yeah, oh yeah. How could we have forgotten her?
We can't. I mean, she was definitely very, very sexy. I mean,
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I think Raquel Welch was one of the best looking babes of the time. I mean,
Ooh.
she was in 1,000,000 BC. She was in Fathom, if I remember correctly. She was also in 100 Rifles. These are some of the films that she was in, but she was a sex bot, at least during the 60s to early 70s.
Definitely.
Another
I
one that kind of reminds me of her is Anne Margaret, but Raquel Welch was definitely a very sexy looking redhead.
Indeed. And the girl playing Greed wasn't bad either.
No, she definitely wasn't. Margaret, I don't know. She was pretty, but I don't know. There was something about her face or nose that looked kind of witchy to me. I don't know. And maybe it's when females' faces look more like horses to me, is when it doesn't really like tantalize me or anything like that. But from the neck down, she wasn't too bad.
Well, I didn't find Margaret too bad, but definitely Lost looked much better, and
Oh
Greed
yeah,
too. Well,
I would have definitely loved to have woken up to Lust.
right?
If Lust walked into to my bedroom, I'd be like, "Hey, baby, you know, what's going on? Got breakfast made? Why don't you sit on my lap? We'll have a little breakfast."
Definitely.
But in any case, no, Rockwell Welsh was definitely there for the imagery and the erotic nature of the film. There was definitely close to some nudity in this film. So I'm quite glad of the risqueness of her character.
Indeed.
But on that note, why don't we go into let's see. What did you think about the production?
Well, I guess for the time when it was made, it was pretty decent. Uh, it, I did have to notice the scene with the flies, that the flies were just animated, but yeah, it was the 60s at that time. It was probably impossible to create realistic looking computer generated flies or do something by recording real flies or something like that. I imagine that would have been too difficult back then, but aside from that, everything looked okay as far as I could notice.
I have to think that these two comedians definitely came from the school of, I would have to say, Monty Python and its generation. Because Monty Python had some definitely like odd sense of humor. Uh, and there was a lot of that coming out of the 60s and 70s that Monty Python put out, like Monty Python's Flying Circus and Monty Python and the Holy Grail, films of this nature. And they all kind of like made fun of life and in the oddest sense of ways. Even Benny Hill kind of came from that generation of comedy, odd comedy. Have you ever seen Benny Hill?
Not sure. I don't think so. I'm sorry.
That's okay. To me, it's comedy that is like not necessarily looked at as often as those who actually enjoy it. It's very niche comedy, black, dark, um, mostly insensitive and slightly insulting.
Uh,
So, and I think that's where kind of where this film came from. That genre of uh, trying to be insulting and yet humorous at its own.
well, in all honesty, my view is that people get way too easily offended these days. They should just let jokes be jokes. Like if you know that someone is just joking, that they are not serious, then just let them joke and don't look deeply into what they said. And I don't know what.
Well, there's always going to be someone that's offended. Oh my god, it just offends my beliefs. Please turn it off, ban it, do it for my sake. You know.
Pretty much.
And unfortunately, our culture tends to cancel which is offensive. So I'm kind of surprised that this movie still exists in some way, shape, or form.
In all honesty, I think artists and the people making all sorts of media should stand up against this cancel culture shit and be like, you're offended. Well, so what if you're offended? I was offended at some point too, and no one gave a shit, so shut the fuck up.
But in any case, why don't we go to our favorite scenes of the film? What was one of your favorite scenes, or if there were several?
Yeah, well, I think one of my favorite scenes would definitely be when this scene when Stanley got turned into a nun. That was definitely hilarious. And I also liked these conversations he was having with George between each two wishes when we got to know a bit of George's side of the story too and got to see some funny pranks and so on.
My favorite scenes, well, one of them was when Lust showed up. That was a classic.
Of course.
And when she undressed, and all you saw her was in her bra and panties, and serving him breakfast. That was. Anyways, but my other scene was when George and Stanley were lying back watching his Margaret, his wife, while he was a rich dude, and he's basically telling him, "Your wife is very attractive. I find her very attractive." You don't mind that I find her really extremely attractive, do you?
Yeah, like George would always, when he creates this new world for Stanley, he would always include a character who looks exactly like him and who would mess things up a bit.
Yes. So. If you wished something, you would have to be careful what you said and make sure that it is a complete wish, instead of just making sure that there's some way for the devil to just jump in and muck it up.
Definitely.
That's why he's the greatest trickster, the greatest muckster of them all.
He definitely did show some intelligence there.
Even in the Bible, he tempts Jesus 3 times. Why don't you jump off this cliff to save your soul, or some shit like that? Or you see all those people over there fighting them? Why don't you go and save them? So
yeah, he did say some things like that.
But in any case, that has nothing to really do with this story. I also kind of like the ending where God is kind of like laughing evilly at him. It's like a different side of God that you don't really get to see. Where he's laughing at the situation that he couldn't quite fix.
It did. And actually, I don't really think, at least in this story, that George was so inherently evil to begin with. I mean, he was just, as he said multiple times throughout the movie, he was just doing the job that God Himself gave him. So, can you really blame him for what he does?
I guess not, but um, regardless, Peter Cook, he's been in quite a few things. Um, I guess he was in the Great Balls of Fire movie. He was in a Sherlock Holmes film called Without a Clue in 1988. A drunken Sherlock Holmes is really just a cover for the real detective, Dr. Watson. uh, I guess he was in The Princess Bride as the impressive clergyman. So he's definitely been in quite a few things. I guess he was in 6 episodes of Gone to Seed in 1992, and the last thing that he was in 1994, where Peter Cook talks golf balls. Oh, he played Lord Wexmeyer in 1994 Black Beauty, which was one of the more notably known horse films.
Oh yeah, I saw that, although a very long time ago.
But other than that, Dudley Moore, I've known him in a couple of features. I know him in the Santa Claus the movie. He also, let's see. He also played in a 80s film when he, or what is it? Was it 80s? Might have been late 80s. Like Father, Like Son in 1987. He played Dr. Jack Hammond and Chris Hammond, where he played a doctor who was a father, and somehow him and his son got their. It's a body switch movie, so somehow a magical thing puts his soul in his son's body, and so on and so forth. It's hilarious. I guess he was the narrator of The Adventures of Milo and Otis. But he's definitely been in a whole lot more than Peter Cook has. He played in Holy Moses. He played in The Hound of the Baskervilles as Dr. Watson, and Mrs. Ada Holmes, Mr. Spigot. Surprisingly,
Wow.
That was
unrelated to this movie.
Yeah, unrelated. But he also played in a version of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1972 as a dormouse. He played in the movie 10, which I have the movie 10. But he played in Arthur and Arthur 2 on the Rocks, which are a couple of more films that I know that I enjoy, just because. Just because. But I guess he also played in an animated version of King Kong called The Mighty Kong. He was the voice of Carl Denham in that particular animation. So, other than that, I think that's pretty much it for this film. Unless you had anything else that you wanted to add that you enjoyed about this particular feature.
Well, I definitely enjoyed the humor, and I must say I was actually surprised that At that time, they made a movie with this kind of devil character where they portrayed the devil as a good-looking man, charming, humorous, and so on. That's a bit more like Lucifer Morningstar in this show with Tom Ellis. And yeah, it was something like we would see nowadays than back then.
Oh yeah. I tend to think that Lucifer Morningstar and Lucy, as he's called by his brother.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was the kind of queen that we were looking for, right? Anyways.
indeed.
But yeah, definitely the kind of humor that you would expect nowadays. So, by the way, is there anything more going on with that show?
Actually, season 6 is coming out fairly soon on the 10th of September, so pretty soon.
Nice. I'll have to remember to tell that to Tammy because she was really excited that it came back.
Oh, indeed.
So, in any case, thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, you enjoyed our discussion on Bedazzled. Next
Yeah,
week, I think
thank
we're
you
gonna.
all.
Next week, I think we'll continue with Brandon Fraser's version of Bedazzled. I heard it's quite different, but it is supposedly a remake of this particular film from the year 2000. So
That will be interesting.
definitely check out that discussion next week. Hopefully, either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I don't know which day. We always decide once the week comes up. So, in any
Cool.
case, thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, and morning wherever you are, and hopefully, we dazzled you.
Yeah, thank you all.